The Lost Boys is a 1987 American teen horror film starring Jason Patric, Corey Haim, Kiefer Sutherland, Jami Gertz, Feldman, Dianne Wiest, Edward Herrmann, Alex Winter, Jamison Newlander, and Barnard Hughes. The film is about two Arizona brothers who move to California and end up fighting a gang of teenage vampires. The title is a reference to the Lost Boys in J.M. Barrie's stories about Peter Pan and Neverland, who, like the vampires, never grow up. A film was followed by two direct-to-video sequels, Lost Boys, The Tribe and Lost Boys, The Thirst. Plot: Michael Emerson and his younger brother, Sam, move with their recently divorced mother, Lucy, to the beach community of Santa Carla, California. The family moves in with Lucy's father, a cantankerous and eccentric old man who lives on the outskirts of town and enjoys taxidermy as a hobby. Michael and Sam begin hanging out on the boardwalk, which is plastered with flyers of missing people. While Lucy gets a job at a local video store run by a conservative man named Max, Michael becomes fascinated by Star, a beautiful young woman he spots at the boardwalk one night and who is in a relationship with David. David is the handsome and mysterious leader of a local gang. Meanwhile, in the local comic book store, Sam meets brothers Edgar and Alan Frog, a pair of self-proclaimed vampire hunters, who warn him that Santa Carla is under attack from vampires and give him horror comics to teach him about the threat. Michael finally talks to Star and is approached by David, who goads Michael into following them by motorcycle down the beach until they reach a dangerous cliff, which Michael almost goes over. At the gang's headquarters, a sunken luxury hotel beneath the cliff, David initiates Michael into the group, having him drink from a bottle of wine. Star warns Michael not to drink, telling him it's blood, but Michael ignores her advice. Later on, David and the others, including Michael, head to the train track where they hang off the edge of the track over a foggy gorge below and all fall down into the gorge. Michael loses his grip and falls down with them. The next day, Michael develops a thirst for blood and impulsively attacks Sam. Sam's dog retaliates, pushing Michael away from Sam and biting him in the hand. Sam realizes that Michael is turning into a vampire by his brother's reflection on the mirror being transparent. A terrified Sam flees to his room with Michael trying to talk to him about the situation. After Michael retreats to his room, he begins to develop supernatural powers. He realizes he is turning into a vampire, and asks Star for help but has sex with her shortly afterwards. From comic books, Sam discovers that, since Michael has not killed anyone, he is a half-vampire, and his condition can be reversed upon the death of the head vampire. The next day, Sam and the Frog brothers conclude that Max is the head vampire, and test this theory whilst he is dating Lucy. However, Max appears to be human. In an attempt to force him into killing, David takes Michael to a bonfire, and instigates a feeding frenzy. Horrified by the sight, Michael escapes and returns home to Sam. Star arrives, and reveals herself as a half-vampire who is looking to be cured. It emerges that David had intended for Michael to be Star's first kill, sealing her fate as a vampire. The next day, a weakening Michael leads Sam and the Frog brothers to the gang's lair. They impale a vampire called Marco with a stake, awakening David and the two others, but the boys escape, rescuing Laddie, a recently abducted half-vampire child. That evening, while Lucy is on a date with Max and the grandfather is out of the house, the teens arm themselves with holy water-filled water guns, a long bow, and stakes, and board themselves up from the attacking vampires. David and the gang attack, and are each killed. The Frog brothers and the Emerson's dog manage to get Paul, one of the vampires, killed by pushing him in a bathtub filled with garlic and holy water, dissolving him in the process. Sam is attacked by Dwayne, another vampire, and squirts him in the face with holy water from his water pistols. Sam then shoots an arrow from his longbow into Dwayne which goes through his heart and into the stereo behind him, electrocuting him and causing parts of his body to explode. Michael then attacks David and impales him on a set of antlers. However, Michael, Star, and Laddie do not transform back to normal with David's death as they had hoped. Lucy and Max return home and Max is revealed to be the head vampire. he informs the boys that to invite a vampire into one's house renders one powerless, explaining why their earlier summation had been incorrect. Max's objective had been to get Lucy to be a mother for his lost boys. However, he is killed when Grandpa crashes his jeep through the wall of the house, impaling Max on the wooden fence posts he is carrying, causing the impaled Max to fly into the fireplace, where he explodes. Michael, Star, and Laddie then return to normal. The film ends with Grandpa casually retrieving a drink from the fridge, seemingly oblivious to the carnage around him. He then declares, "One thing about living in Santa Carla one never could stomach. All the damn vampires," revealing that he had known about the vampires all along. Cast. Production. The majority of the film was shot in the city of Santa Cruz, California, and in the surrounding Santa Cruz Mountains, although the name of the fictional town is Santa Carla. The amusement park scenes were filmed at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. The same park appeared in Brotherhood of Justice. The boardwalk also was seen in the Dirty Harry sequel Sudden Impact, Harold and Maude, and Dangerous Minds. The inside of the cave and house were filmed on stages 12 and 15 at Warner Brothers. The first screenplay written by Janice Fisher and James Jeremias, was about a bunch of Goonies-type 5th-6th grade kid vampires, with the Frog Brothers as chubby 8-year-old Cub Scouts, and Star appearing as a boy instead of a love interest. The original inspiration came from James Jeremias, who caught upon the notion that Peter Pan could fly, visited Wendy and her brothers at night, and never grew old. The simple notion that Peter Pan was a vampire was the genesis for the story. In the first draft of the script, the character of David later played by Kiefer Sutherland was originally named Peter, and other characters also had names from the Peter Pan story. In the final draft, many name changes were made, but originally the two brothers were Michael and John and the mother's name was Wendy. The most obvious nod to the Pan story is the dog, Nanook, inspired by the character Nana the dog. The grandfather character was never a part of the original story but later created in the draft by Jeffrey Boehm, who was hired to do the final rewrite. The Frog Brothers, Edgar and Allan, are named after the Gothic author, Edgar Allan Poe. Executive producer Richard Donner originally intended to direct the movie himself, but as production languished, he moved on to Lethal Weapon and eventually hired Joel Schumacher, crediting his wife, producer Lauren Schuller Donner for the idea. Joel Schumacher hated the material and averred that he would only sign on if he could change the characters to teenagers, believing this would be sexier and more interesting. Schumacher later remembered his experience making the film. "We really didn't know what we were doing then. We made it up as we went along." The studio was incredibly patient and supportive considering they'd never heard of Kiefer Sutherland, or Jason Patric, or Jami Gertz, or Corey Haim. It was another big chance taken by a studio. We were very lucky. A lot of people at the studio didn't think you could mix horror and humor. Reception: The Lost Boys grossed over $32 million. Its tagline was, "We sleep all day. Party all night. Never grow old. Never die. Eat a unregistered trademark s fun to be a vampire." Critical reception was generally positive. Roger Ebert gave the movie 2.5 out of 4 stars, praising the cinematography and a cast that's good right down the line, but ultimately describing Lost Boys as a triumph of style over substance and an ambitious entertainment that starts out well but ends up selling its soul. Karen James of the New York Times called Dianne Wiest's character a dopey mum, and Barnard Hughes's character a caricature of a feisty old grandpa. She found the film more of a comedy than a horror and the finale funny. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film maintains a rating of 75% with the critical consensus flawed but eminently watchable. Joel Schumacher's teen vampire thriller blends horror, humor, and plenty of visual style with standout performances from a cast full of young 1980s stars. On Metacritic it has a rating of 63/100. It won a Saturn Award for Best Horror Film in 1987. Novel: As was the case for many of Warner Brothers films at the time, Craig Shaw Gardner was given a copy of the script and asked to write a short novel to accompany the film's release. It was released in paperback by Berkeley Publishing and is 220 pages long. It includes several scenes later dropped from the film, such as Michael working as a trash collector for money to buy his leather jacket. It expands the roles of the opposing gang, the Surf Nazis, who were seen as nameless victims of the vampires in the film. It includes several tidbits of vampire lore, such as not being able to cross running water and salt sticking to their forms. Sequels: Kiefer Sutherland's character David is impaled on a pair of antlers but does not explode or dissolve in any way. He was intended to not be dead, which would be picked up in a sequel, The Lost Girls. Scripts for this and other sequels circulated, and the original film's director, Joel Schumacher, made several attempts at a sequel during the 1990s. David makes a reappearance in the 2008 comic book series, The Lost Boys, Reign of Frogs, which serves as a sequel to the first film and prequel to Lost Boys, The Tribe, and explains that the antlers missed David's heart. A direct-to-DVD sequel, Lost Boys, The Tribe, was greenlit more than 20 years after the release of the original film. Corey Feldman returned as Edgar Frog, with a cameo by Corey Haim as Sam Emerson. Kiefer Sutherland's half-brother Angus Sutherland played the lead vampire. In March 2009, MTV reported that work had begun on a third film entitled Lost Boys, The Thirst, with Feldman serving as an executive producer in addition to playing Edgar Frog, and Newlander returning as Alan Frog. Haim, who was not slated to be part of the cast, died in March 2010. The film was released on DVD October 12, 2010. Music: Thomas Newman wrote the original score as an eerie blend of orchestra and organ arrangements, while the music soundtrack contains a number of notable songs and several covers, including Good Times, a duet between INXS and former Cold Chisel lead singer Jimmy Barnes, which reached number 2 on the Australian charts in early 1987. This cover version of a 1960s Australian hit by the Easterbeats was originally recorded to promote the Australian May Tour of Australia in early 1987, headlined by INXS and Barnes. Tim Capello's cover of The Calls I Still Believe was featured in the film as well as on the soundtrack. Tim Capello makes a small cameo appearance in the movie playing the song at the Santa Cruz Boardwalk, with his saxophone and trademark bodybuilder muscles on display. The soundtrack also features a cover version of the Doors' song People Are Strange by Echo and the Bunnymen. The song is featured in the movie as an alternate, shortened version with a slightly different music arrangement. Lou Gramm, the famed lead singer of Foreigner, also recorded Lost in the Shadows for the soundtrack, along with a video which featured clips from the film. The theme song, Cry Little Sister, was originally recorded by Gerard McMahon for the soundtrack, and later re-released on his self-titled album G. Tom Mac in 2000. In the film's sequel, Cry Little Sister was covered by a Seattle-based rock band, Aiden. Original motion picture soundtrack, Good Times by INXS and Jimmy Barnes Euro 349, Lost in the Shadows by Lou Gramm Euro 617, Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me by Roger Daltrey Euro 609, Laying Down the Law by INXS and Jimmy Barnes Euro 424, People Are Strange by Echo and the Bunnymen Euro 336, Cry Little Sister by Gerard McMahon Euro 446, Power Play by Eddie and the Tide Euro 357, I Still Believe by Tim Capello Euro 342, Beauty Has Her Way by Mummy Calls Euro 356, To the Shock of Miss Louise by Thomas Newman Euro 121. The soundtrack was first released on LP and cassette in 1987 by Atlantic Records, then CD in 1990. References. External links: The Lost Boys at the Internet Movie Database, The Lost Boys at All Movie, The Lost Boys at Box Office Mojo, The Lost Boys at Rotten Tomatoes, The Story Behind The Lost Boys.